Technical session number 24, printers. So throughout this technical session, we're going to be talking about 4 main categories of printers. We're going to be talking about impact printers, inkjet, laser, and thermal. We are going to be looking at and be able to identify common steps for installing printers. Pretty straightforward. Identify common pitfalls when installing printers, compare and contrast different types, and identify common problems that come up with printers and describe how to solve them. Some of these we may be familiar with from the troubleshooting session we did yesterday, but they might make a little more sense once we start diving into the printer ecosystem. Behavior skills and mindsets we want to try to keep in mind while moving through this technical session and throughout the course. Communication, absolutely. It's a team sport. We want to be able to communicate effectively with our team. If we have issues that go beyond what we will be doing in our shift and we have to hand it off to somebody, we have to be able to quickly and concisely convey that information to that team member so they know what is expected, what the customer is expecting with regards to communication, what they're expecting with regards to timeline. Also, if we are handing it up to a higher tier, we need to let them know what's been done, what hasn't been done. Why do we choose to do those things? Why are we formulating the theories we're doing? But do it in a very quick, concise manner. Also, personal responsibility, taking ownership of your actions, both the good and the bad. Not putting off till tomorrow or later what can be done right now. Like when we do our study sessions, our asynchronous study time, that is the time you could go ahead and put that effort in now. If you put 2 or 3 hours in, if we have that time available, that's 2 or 3 hours that you can put towards other things later in the day. You may not have to study as much in the evening because you've already taken care of it. So, moving on. 4 major categories of printers we should be familiar with, at least topically, with a lot of these. We have our old-fashioned impact printers, still hold a few key uses in certain markets. Inkjet printers, which tends to be the most popular due to its low cost of entry. We have the thermal printers, heavily used in shipping and point of sale. And then finally, our laser printer, which tends to be our most complicated printing process, so much so that we will have to describe the 7 steps of the laser printing process. All right, impact printer features. As we talked about yesterday, this is a printer that physically makes contact with the paper. It is striking an ink ribbon to impress an image upon the surface of the page. Best known one out there would be a dot matrix. They had the spooled paper that would be fed through, and they ran across line by line. And understand that that is how the printer receives information on the page, is line by line. Every single line gets fed through that printer one at a time. And as it's going across, it is using the dots or the pistons to press the images upon the page, forming letters, words, pictures, and the such. The other kind of impact printer you may come across is called a daisy wheel. When you look at the actual printer head inside of it, it looks like an open flower. There's a bunch of hammer levers and it rotates, and then there's a piston that hits each one of those letters to push it onto the page, kind of like a typewriter, except instead of all the arms being laid together and then coming up individually, they're in a spool that spins around. So the 2 types you'll need to know: daisy wheel and dot matrix. All right. The ribbon itself is soaked in ink, and that is what deposits the image onto the page. Downfalls of them: they are very slow and they are very noisy. If you've ever been in the room where several of these are operating, it gets loud really quick. Advantages: it has a continual tractor feed that allows for event and data logging, like in hospitals and things like that. If they have like trying to get streaming data, this is one way they can accomplish that. You can use carbon paper, which is very, very useful for multi-part forms. This is one of the key features of the impact printers, the multi-part form, which is why you will heavily see it being used in auto repair as well as warehousing. Also, couple that with the fact that they are extremely durable. So if you're operating in a, in a mechanic shop or in a warehouse where you have a lot of dust and debris and things like that in the air, they are a lot less susceptible to damage or issues due to that. Major impact printer components. You have your sheet guide right here. Obviously, you have your access cover. And then inside, you will have your print head assembly. You have your Planton knob for paper feed and a power switch. Pretty simple. A carriage moves the print head assembly back and forth across to allow the image to be pushed onto the page. Do you have a question, Alan? All right. Inkjet printers, kind of like we talked about yesterday. Very low cost of entry. Utilizes a print head connected to a carriage that contains the ink. And why the cost of entry is low on this is because the vast majority of the technology with regards to an inkjet printer is within the printer cartridge itself, not necessarily in the printer. The printer mechanically is not terribly different from the dot matrix. It still has the carriage traveling back and forth. Instructions are fed to the printer line by line. And then the computer basically, or the circuit board in there, tells the inkjets or the cartridges themselves how to disperse the ink across the page. It sprays ionized ink onto the paper to form images using a matrix of very small dots. And then the print head moves across the paper. One line of text is created with each pass. Ink is stored in very special small containers called cartridges. And the resolution of the images it creates is measured in DPI, or dots per inch. And then the printer speed, not just for inkjets, but for all printers, measured in pages per minute, or ppm. Now, some of them have what's called a duplex assembly on them, which allows you to print on both sides of the page. And always want to remember that that is called duplex. Common in inkjet and laser. They provide reasonably good quality and relatively fast print. And they can also do color as well as black and white. Dot matrix could also do color. It just wasn't as, you didn't have as big a variety of colors. I don't know if anybody's ever used dot matrix printers before, but they actually had a color ribbon, and it was just like 3 or 4 stripes of ink across that the hammers would adjust their height to get the colors they wanted. So, duplexing on both sides. Resolution, dots per inch. Speed, pages per minute. Interestingly, how the ink is transferred from the cartridge to the page is due to a heating element that is inside the ink cartridge nozzle itself. And it creates a little bit of a bubble in there. And as it heats the bubble grows, because when you heat something, it expands. And the expansion of that bubble forces the ink to eject from the tube. And it's rapidly doing this hundreds or thousands of times per second. So pretty amazing that, you know, this technology is working the way it is. And all of this resides internally inside the ink cartridge, again, leading to why ink cartridges are so expensive and the printers are so inexpensive. Basic pieces of the inkjet printer. You would have the ribbon cable that is attached to your control circuitry board. This is what is going to feed the data line by line into the printer itself. You have the carriage right here, which holds all your ink cartridges, and it is shuttled across the stabilizer bar by the belt that is driven by the print stepper motor over here. So down here, you would have your paper feed and the print head assembly itself is on the cartridges. Questions so far? All right. Thermal printers. Most of us recognize this based off of shipping labels and receipts a lot of times. They utilize a very special type of paper that essentially burns the image into the page themselves. This is most commonly used in printers. It is a very simple mechanism. Very little can go wrong with these. And for the most part, they just need regular cleaning and they operate pretty good. There is another type of thermal printer that uses a thermal transfer printer, uses a wax-based ink on a ribbon, and the heating elements melts the ink onto the paper. And this is also used in receipts, printing barcode labels, clothing labels, things of that nature. They're pretty reliable and easy to maintain due to their simplicity. Can anybody think of what is the downfall of thermal printers? Anybody have a receipt and keep it in their car for a long period of time? What happens?
The image disappears. It fades or something.
The image disappears.
And it fades.
And it fades, yeah. Over time, it fades too, regardless, even if it's kept in a relatively cool temperature. So the image itself fades based off the thermal printing. So if you ever receive a receipt and you're gonna, you know, something you're gonna be saving for a long period of time, like warranties, things like that, always get a scan of that receipt or take a picture of that receipt and save that, because they can still scan the barcode off of a good quality image. Because likely if you put it in storage, like in an accordion folder or something along those lines, within a year or two, that image will be completely bleached out and you won't be able to read any of it. Questions so far with regards to thermal printers? All right, here is basic components where you have pretty much a heating element in both. This one here has a protective coating that as the paper feeds through, you have base paper with a coating on it, and it allows, as the heating element passes through, it forms an image, and it can be typically either black, blue, purple, something along those lines are the most common colors you would see in thermal printers. And then you have transfer printing with regards to the wax-based ink. And as it heats up, the spots where the image actually occur, it allows the ink itself to adhere to the page as it is transferred through. The positive, you know, we talked about the negatives, that the image fades over time. The positive, can anybody think of what a positive for a thermal printer is, other than it's like mechanically simple? Has anybody ever used a thermal printer before? They are relatively durable. Yes, Alan.
They are quiet.
They are very quiet. Absolutely. Yes. but some inkjets and laser printers can be quiet as well. The advantage that puts them, for the most part, head and shoulders above their competition is speed. You can print hundreds of labels in a couple seconds off of thermal printers. They can print extremely fast. So that is one of the real big advantages of them, with as opposed to dot matrix or LaserJet. So it works great in retail. That's why when you go into CVS and you buy a soda and they give you 6 feet of receipt, they're able to do that pretty quickly rather than you having to wait for 2 hours for everything to print out and then be able to go on your day. So that would be thermal printing. Now, on to the most complex printing mechanism we will be dealing with and the bulk of our time. Laser printers. Pretty high cost of entry, though over time, that cost decreases drastically because of the use of toner, and it is less expensive than trying to do it with a LaserJet. They produce very high quality, high speed images and texts using a process of electrophotographic imaging. So if you hear toner, that is specific to LaserJet. They don't use ink. So if somebody says it is out of ink, typically not a laser printer. Toner is specific to it. It is a powdered like silicone or silica material or plastic. I'll remember that here in a second. That is used to melt into the page itself, fusing it down to the page. They are non-impact, so the device itself does not make contact with the paper. The paper is moved through rollers, yes, but the actual print heads do not make contact. They can range from very low volume, personal, to very high use, multi-user use, and some of these things are quite impressive. Some of them will actually do hole punching, stapling, and binding all in one. You press print what you want it to do, and it's basically spitting out books at the end of it, and you just take each of those catalogs and you're done. So you don't have to do all that stuff yourself. All of it's done in a printer, but those printers cost tens of thousands of dollars, quite expensive, and not necessarily for the average user or even the average company. Very specialized companies would typically get something like this, although it is not uncommon to have the large network printers or enterprise printers set up in your office. You will spend a lot of your time doing this if you're in an enterprise setting, setting people up with printers, troubleshooting problems on the printers, things of that nature. So we are now able to actually do color printing on laser printers, which is pretty amazing. They basically operate from 4 printer cartridges. They have black, cyan, magenta, and yellow, kind of like inkjet printers have the same thing. They have that cyan, magenta, and yellow, and through those they can blend over 1 million colors, something along those lines. But in order to accomplish this, they quite literally have to go through the entire printing process for each color. So the 7 steps we will talk about, they have to go through pretty much all 7 steps for every single color. Now, the black tones you get would be like a carbon melt mix, and it's a polyester plastic resin. And color toner utilizes other pigments other than carbon, obviously. All right. Components of a laser printer. So here is that fun laser where it gets its fancy name from right here. And the laser itself is stationary, utilizing a mirror to etch its images onto the photosensitive drum. Up here, you have the corona wire, which will essentially charge or erase the drum itself. So as it's writing here and spinning, it's transferring the toner to the page, coming back around. It is erased, cleaned, and then the whole process begins anew. And this drum is going to roll over multiple times per page. So it's quite amazing how it does all this stuff in a very, very short period of time. Questions so far? All right. Next, we have the 7 steps to
Hey,
laser
Kelly, I
printing.
have a quick question before you go on.
Yes, sir.
From that last slide, is the gather the information is being sent via the laser,
Mhm.
but if it's hitting a mirror, isn't that stuff reflected backwards?
No, the mirror is angled.
Oh, it's angled.
So
Okay,
the mirror, the laser doesn't move. The mirror does.
I got you. Okay,
So in the mirror, in the laser, the laser is utilizing the mirror is moving, and it is using that laser to etch the image into the drum. So it can be passed through. All right. So 7 steps to laser printing. Processing, pretty straightforward. Processes the image. Remember we were talking about dot matrix and inkjet receives instructions line by line, correct? So as it's coming in from the computer, line by line, it is etching those images onto the page, and that is how it receives its instructions. Laser printing is different. It receives its instructions page by page. So when you send when you send a print request to the printer, the CPU processes the request, sends the job over to an area of memory called the print spooler, which enables the printer to create a queue essentially of multiple jobs, putting them in order. And it doesn't necessarily mean in order of receipt, because we actually can set it to order of priority. Print jobs coming from specific machines may have significantly higher priority than others. So that actually can be established and will be shuffled in the spooler. When the printer receives the job, it processes that image, generating a raster image or a bitmap essentially of the final page that is going to be printing. So that is processing. Essentially, it is receiving the instructions and processing them to begin the job. Next, number 2 is conditioning or charging. At this point, to make the drum receptive to new images, the corona wire that runs across it that we were talking about creates a charge between -600 and 1000 volts upon the photosensitive drum. That is basically wiping it clean and creating a bare slate to put the image upon. So corona transfer charges the drum, prepping it for the image. Next, we have exposing. So now, since the drum is photosensitive, light can help disperse the charge upon it. That's where the laser comes in. The laser itself then, reflecting off of the mirror, creates a positive image on the surface. I think it drops the charge of the drum wherever the laser hits, it drops it down to like -100 volts or something like that. So it goes down from like 600 to 1000 down to like 100. And that's etching the entire image of the page onto the drum itself. After that, we move into developing. So the particles with the lesser negative charge attract the toner from the toner case to those spots and create a developed image upon the photosensitive drum. So it is developing the image upon the roller. Next, we're going to transfer that image. So you have the transfer corona wire, which gives the paper that you're sending through the laser printer a positive charge. So opposites attract, right? So we give a positive charge to the paper, and I think it's like positive 500 volts. And so as the paper passes underneath the photosensitive drum with the image developed upon it, it will draw those particles from the roller to the paper, transferring the image down. It's no contact has been made. It is literally using static electricity. So the positive charge of the paper draws the negatively charged particles to it, creating the image. So it is transferring to the page. Up next, we have fusing, which is basically what it says it is. You have two hot rollers that are heated up, and as the paper passes through it, that polyester filament is melted or baked down into the page, cooking it, which is why when you pull out the page itself, it's hot. Ejecting it from the printer then, or if it is color image, it's going to go back through that entire process multiple times. But the seventh and final step, which should make sense, is cleaning. There is a blade that scrapes off any residual toner from the photosensitive drum, and the transfer corona puts a unique or a uniform charge across the whole thing, erasing the previous image, allowing it to start all over again. So that is what every page that goes through a laser printer, that is what happens to every single page as it goes through a laser printer, essentially. Now, in your mind, do we have a mnemonic? Yes, we do. In fact, we have two. So, depending on which flavor you like, to give you the same 7 steps. The first one that was taught to me by one of my study group members was, please come every day to feel complete. So 7 steps. So 7 steps: processing, charging, exposing, developing, transferring, fusing, and cleaning. So that was the one she preferred, and a few people in class preferred. But another one was taught to us, and we couldn't forget it, which is the second mnemonic, which is printers can't even do the effing cleaning. Most people prefer that one. I'm not judging.
Hey, you'll repeat that one. That's the one I'm gonna use.
All right.
I got you, Kelly. It's already in chat.
Thank you. So printers can't even do the effing clean. So, and then when we asked our last cohort, which one did they use for the test? It was unanimous. They all used the second one. But like I said, some people like to keep it clean. So please come every day to feel complete. That's the other one we got. So you can use whichever one you prefer. So I highly, highly recommend you memorize these steps and what happens in each step. You are likely to get multiple questions on the 1001 surrounding just the 7 steps. They're gimmies. Don't pass them up.
Right. CompTIA knows that laser printing is a very normalized thing in enterprise settings, and you need to know your way around that. And they really do enjoy asking questions about it.
Printers in general.
It will feel like it's more than they should. Like, that's how many questions they ask. It just feel like, hey, how many did I answer already? I feel like I've answered quite a few. So this is a way to get a leg up, like Kelly's saying.
Yeah. And ask Avery next, when you see him, how many printer questions did he receive on 1001? So he received a lot. And these he struggled with them through the mock exams. Like, he continually struggled with printers, and that was one of his biggest hurdles to get over. So, questions so far? All right. I like to throw this one in here too as well. You have virtual printers. We have talked about this in class, especially after you take each exam. You are probably using a virtual printer where you can save to PDF or print to PDF, something like that, or print to file. It is essentially what a virtual printer is. If you do not have a printer, it allows you to essentially create that document where you can email it or what have you, or save it for later until you actually do have access to a file or to a printer. So you have print to file. It allows that, so that you can later print it, even if you don't have access to the program that created it. You have print to PDF, which will change the format it to an Adobe or other third-party PDF. You have print to XPS, which is an open format standard for Microsoft. It is their answer to the PDF, though I don't know how heavily this is used. Most people tend to just prefer the PDF because it is cross-platform. And then you have print to image as well. It's kind of like scanning a document, so it'll print it to like a JPEG, a GIF, or a TIFF, something along those lines. Yes, Humberto.
Yes, I am using print screen of the nearpod to land it in my Word document.
Okay.
Is there a way to extract the text from those images?
There are programs that can do that. I'm sure there's some that you can probably find that are free, that you can extract the text. Are you talking about from our Nearpods?
Yes, I take a print screen of those into my Word document.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to have a way to extract the text from the images.
From the student paste one, can't you highlight text, Marvin? From the student paste ones? I can't remember.
I don't want to misspeak on that. Has
Okay.
anyone tried to do that before maybe someone may have already done it in the class?
What's the question? I'm sorry.
From the student paste Nearpod slides, can you cut and paste or copy and paste the just text, or no?
I couldn't.
Okay.
I couldn't.
Okay. I'll see if I can find a program that'll transfer it for you from image. I'll have to look and see if they have any that have like a free trial or that's open source.
Yeah, because whenever I do anything of this, I'm snipping to get it, but I understand if you don't want to have to do that for sure.
Got it. All right. Common features of all printers. There is a variety of languages we use to interact with printers. One of the most common ones, and one you may recognize, especially when we're talking about binary, is the ASCII, and that is for simple text, typically used with your dot matrix. Once you stepped up above that, you start getting into PostScript, which was developed by Adobe itself. And the image processing is done by the printer and not the PC at that point, as opposed to ACII, which utilized simple text. And if anybody remembers, if you use dot matrix, the rudimentary images that they would create utilizing letters and numbers to actually create pictures, it was a big step up. Next, you moved up to printer control language, or PCL, and that was developed by Hewlett Packard. And the only main thing was it did not support advanced graphical functions, couldn't do detailed images. Windows kind of went their own way. They use GDI, or graphics device interface, to handle their print functions when it sends it to the printer. And finally, from Windows 7, Vista, and XML, paper specification, or XPS, was put into place, and it had improvements upon the GDI, such as greater color enhancement. All right. Now, when you go into the printer functions within your settings, once you've tried to print your image, it'll give you a plethora of options to choose from. You can adjust the page orientation, which is wonderful. You have your vertical image, which is portrait, and horizontal, which is landscape, much like on your phones. Resolution, do you want it to be low resolution and use a lot less ink, or do you want high and also be faster, or higher resolution using more ink or toner and take more time? Collation. Does anybody know what collation is? It's a wonderful feature.
Isn't it stapling?
Doesn't quite staple it, because you can collate on a pretty inexpensive printer, but you're knocking on the right door, and you're pretty close to it.
I think that you can print 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1 twice, or 3 times, and then 2 twice or 3 times.
Okay, that is essentially the options you have. If you don't collate, it'll print page 1, page 1, page 1, page 1, page 2, page 2, page 2, page 2, and you have to sort it yourself when you're done. Or you can collate the print, and it'll print 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, making life a lot easier for you. Once you're done, all you have to do is separate and staple, rather than, shuffle things together.
If you got a super fancy one, it will staple it for you as well.
Yes.
And also, when you print it out, you'll see the natural separation of those stacks. So as Kelly said, 1, 2, 3, 4, it will not look the same. So you'll be able to easily pull the packet that you created apart and staple if your machine isn't fancy enough to staple for you.
Exactly. Next, paper size, types, and sources. Paper size, are you using standard 8.5 by 11? Are you using legal, which is, what's it, 8.5 by 23? Something along those lines. I could be wrong on the dimensions on legal. What type of paper? What's the weight? Is it much thicker than your standard office paper that you would be using? And then source. Now, when you get above a simple desktop printer, you may have 4 or 5 drawers full of paper. Different types of paper in each drawer, and you will need to indicate which type, where's the location of that type of paper that you want to print to. And then after you have done any kind of work on a printer, always, always, always print a test page to verify your work and make sure everything is functioning properly. So in any printer repair, print a test page should always be one of the last things you do. Also could be one of the first things you do for troubleshooting. Questions so far? All right. hooking up your printers. You can have a local hookup or a network hookup. If it's local, it can be USB, can be Wi-Fi, or you can use parallel ports, which are those really wide ones that we remember from the connectors and cables lesson that everybody loved so much. The really wide connectors that you would clip or screw into the back of the computer. So parallel, Wi-Fi, or USB. There is another method, but us as security-minded individuals will have turned that feature off, which is what?
Mark mouthed it. Somebody else said for me. Talked about it. 3 letters.
WPS.
WPS, yes. So as security-minded individuals, we'll have turned that off on our printers, but that is technically another local option. Now, network options, either through Wi-Fi or Ethernet. And most local printers, for the most part, we'll leave some caveats in there. They tend to be relatively plug and play, but all of them will require additional drivers to get full functionality. Like we talked about originally when we were talking about drivers, you may have a HP 5325 printer, you plug it in and it goes to talk to the computer. The computer says, hey, well, I can communicate with HP 5000 series printers. So you have basic drivers where they can have that back and forth communication. And then at that point, you can go out and get the drivers. Also, some printers may already have the basic drivers installed physically on the printer. So when you hook up and they begin that conversation, the printer can go ahead and download those drivers into the machine as well. So you have basic functionality, and then you just need to update the drivers with the most recent patches. All right. So, and if you are going to download X drivers, typically the best place to go to find it, manufacturer's website. Be wary of downloading drivers from third-party locations. All right. And the drivers themselves will either be 32-bit for 32-bit OSs or 64-bit for 64-bit OSs. Now, basic steps for plugging in a local. Plug the printer connector into the port or network, however you want. Turn on the printer. If installing drivers from the manufacturer's program, launch the printer setup program and just follow the directions all the way through. If using the Windows installation process, you open printers and faxes, click add a printer, follow the add printer wizard directions, and then print a test page. Now, here is a good pro tip. If you are installing a new printer into a network, name that printer something that will identify which printer it is. My previous organization I worked for was terrible at this. So each printer was essentially just its series number. So quite often you would have people sitting there saying like, well, I've been trying to print, like I've printed like 15 copies of this thing and it hasn't come out. And then lo and behold, they're printing to the printer on the other side of the office. They just clicked on the wrong one. Also, since we were a multinational organization, we would on occasion have people come down from other offices. We had a salesman come down from Ohio, was trying to print a presentation for a customer here in Jacksonville, printed the presentation 20 or 30 times, couldn't get it to print, even though he swore he was selecting the right printer. Then the home office in Ohio finally called us and asked us why we were continually printing to their department up in Ohio. So we were all on the same network, operating as if we, virtually as if we were in the same location. So it was just sending the print jobs to his home printer back in Ohio. So in order to avoid wasting resources, things like that, name your printer like third floor accounting, Jacksonville, something along those lines, which printer it is and where it's located. I'm off my soapbox. All right. Printer servers. This is either hardware or software that manages print jobs sent to one or more printers on a network. It can be a dedicated hardware device with software installed on it, like a computer installed next to a printer, and you have the printer hooked up to the computer, and the computer is basically just sharing it with the network. Or it can actually be embedded firmware on the printer itself, on the circuit board printer itself, and can be used to manage your print jobs, view the status of the printer, see the job history, check your counters, because in servicing laser printers, a lot of times you want to pay attention to your page count. Once it hits a certain page count, you're going to want to have that printer serviced so that it will continue to operate optimally. And then a lot of these utilities can be accessed through a browser. All right, Windows Print Management monitors and manages your printer queues for all printers that are on your network. That is very nice of them. Each computer on the network that shares a printer is considered a print server at that point. Questions? I know we're all excited because we're learning way more about printers than we ever wanted to know. All right, steps to share an installed printer. Windows 7, make sure to turn on file and printer sharing. Make sure that is selected. 8.1, printer sharing itself must be specifically turned on. And Windows 7, 8, and 10, you open the properties dialog box, select sharing, and then you can select share this printer, enter the name for the printer, remember, make it unique, and then make sure the drivers themselves are available as well. Questions?
Ms. Sims, are you doing any of this at your place of business? Are you setting up printers? Do you have to do that for the admin side, or that's someone else? Okay.
Give her a
Okay.
minute. So Avery, why don't you tell us how many printer questions you got?
Way too many.
Hey, hold on, Avery. Before you say that, I want to get Pozo a question, and then we got to do something for Avery special. Let me pause this right.
So after this, we'll move on one more step. So now steps to install a shared printer. Now, in this, you would go to Windows Internet Explorer, Windows Explorer, not Windows Internet Explorer. That's a much older system. You have Windows Explorer, which explores the files in the system. And then go to Network and Network Places window. After that, use your control panel devices and printers window in Windows 7. In 8, you would use control panel, hardware, and sound. Click Advanced Printer Setup on the new screen, and then select the third radio button for Add Printer using TCP IP address or host name. This is where unique names become very useful when you are searching for printers, although the IP address works very well also. And typically you can get the IP address for the printer. They will have a touch screen on the front of them where you can, or a menu where you can kind of cycle through, find the IP address, write it down, and then install it into the computer you need to add the printer to. All right. Printer queue. Now, you can access this pretty quickly by double-clicking the printer icon on either the devices and printers window or in the taskbar, essentially when it's active. Where's the taskbar? Bottom. Very good. Which part of the taskbar would this likely show up in? got two names. No, Mark.
The system tray.
System tray. What's the other name for it?
Notification center.
Notification area. Very good. All right. So bottom right side of your screen in the system tray or notification area. From here, if you accidentally sent a print job of 500 pages and you need to print out a 2-page document to send to your, to hand to your boss, you can pause the printing of one job and then move forward to another one. Or if you accidentally send it in there, you can cancel the job. Or if the job itself got, frozen or locked up and it's essentially clogging up the spooler, you can cancel that job and see if it allows the spooler to keep moving after that. All right. Routine cleaning. We will need to pay attention to this because it can extend the life of the printer. Basically, follow the manufacturer's directions. A lot of times you will need to order a service kit, and it would be common parts to replace during a service session with the printer with thermal, dot matrix, and inkjet. Likely you will do this yourself with a thermal. Most often it will be a service provider coming in to take care of that for you, more likely. When you're doing the cleaning outside, you can use kind of a damp cloth, something along those lines. Inside, dry cloth only. Unless you have spilled toner in there. Then they have a very, very specific type of vacuum cleaner for toner. Since toner has an electrostatic charge, if you try wiping it, you're just going to smear it. And we don't ever want to use regular vacuums inside of a computer type device anyway, because of electrostatic discharge. You never use compressed air, again, especially with toner, because you will blow it all over the place. Not to mention you could blow dust and debris further into the printer, causing more problems. Never, ever, ever, ever use ammonia-based cleaners. When sweeping up toner, they do actually have magnetic brushes that make it easier to sweep up the toner itself. Now, in inkjets, the printer software may actually have a clean inkjet nozzles as well as calibrating the head alignment. This is typically a good idea to do, probably about, once a month, if not more frequently, depending on how much you use the printer. And then the cleaning of the heads is, as we talked about yesterday, there's that moist sponge off the side. The carriage will take it over there and kind of rub it back and forth to kind of clean off any residual ink that may be on the printer heads. All right, questions so far? All right, overarching problems that you can come across. Always remember, document everything. Start with the simplest solutions first. Is the printer connected to the computer? Is it turned on? Is it plugged in? So start with the simplest things first, the least invasive solutions first, and then work up from there. You can also use online support utilizing the manufacturer's website. They may have troubleshooting tips, updated device drivers. If needed, you could order replacement parts, additional software, things of that nature. They might also, have a frequently asked questions. If you have problems with this, check here, all that kind of fun stuff. All right. So this is for local printer problems. Now, one of the first things we want to try with regards to troubleshooting, print a test page. If it does not print, use the troubleshooting in Windows to see if you can locate that particular issue. And you can kind of work from there. Out of memory error. Printers, surprise, have their own RAM that can hold print jobs, fonts, and adding extra memory can speed this up. If you are working with a graphics design company, they will have tens of thousands of fonts that they will be working from, and that eats up a lot of memory. But yes, you can, especially on the enterprise printers, upgrade the RAM inside to give yourself more memory. Also, it may be a case where you have a print job is jammed itself, and you have people thinking that there's no problem, so they keep trying to reprint the same thing over and over again. So you have 15 or 20 of the same document coming in from multiple different sources, choose up the RAM, crashes the system. At that point, you want to restart the spooler, tell everybody, look, you're gonna have to resend your print job one time to try to get it through. Other strategies you can use for network connectivity problems, verify that you have the correct printer as default, because if you have another printer that was default and then they just temporarily use this one but never change that setting, it's going to automatically change back over to the default printer for the next print job. Verify your IP addresses. Verify the printer is online. You can ping the printer. So it's a great troubleshooting technique using ping, especially when any kind of network issues. You start with your NIC, ping your NIC, then you ping your switch, then you ping your router, and you slowly work out, trying to see where the disconnect is in communication. Reboot the computer, uninstall and reinstall the printer, and then use diagnostic utilities or software as well. Pretty straightforward. Shared printer problems. Once the connection has been established, try printing a test page from the local printer and then try printing it from yours if you're using a local print server that somebody's sharing with you. Again, verify you have the correct printer selected. Verify access to the computer to which the printer is attached. Also going to be done via ping. Delete the printer and reinstall it, and verify hard drive space. Now, if you have issues in the printer queue, delete all the print jobs. If it's locked up, start over, because likely there's going to be multiple prints in there. That's going to be chewing up memory, overloading the spool. So you want to make sure, just let everybody know we've deleted all print jobs. All jobs need to be resent at this point. Verify the correct printer is selected online. Always check your cables, because physical connections tend to be a lot of our problems, unfortunately. Stop and restart Windows Print Spooler service. Delete the printer, reinstall it, check for updates in the drivers. And then again, try to print to a file, see if it's the internal print mechanism or if there is something in between your computer and the printer. And then print from safe mode. So you won't get any fancy imagery, but it might let you know there is a basic connection there as well. Poor print quality, general terms. If you get garbled characters on the page, what did we say that was yesterday? It's just a bunch of random symbols. What do we look for?
Said it today too.
We did.
I did. T can't answer it.
The driver.
Drivers. There you go. Another thing you can do, print using a different application, because it could be the application is using one print language and the printers you're talking to is using another. So try using a different application, see if that actually changes it. Is the USB connection securely in both ends? And then try restarting the printer and or computer, update the drivers. And then if it's still kind of fuzzy, not, you know, not clear printing, the printer itself may need servicing. Wrong colors. Some paper, like photo paper, can be designed to print only on a single side. So you need to make sure the paper itself is loaded in properly. Quick trick, print a test page, put an arrow on the top of the top page of the drawer. And then when it comes out, you can tell which side is going to be up, and you can adjust the loading of the paper accordingly. Adjust the quality of the print. Might help. And then for inkjet printer, try cleaning the ink cartridges themselves, calibrating the printer, making sure that the ink is in the proper locations, like it hasn't been switched around, unfortunately, if somebody was in a rush when they were changing out the ink. And then for a laser printer, try calibrating the printer itself. There is another one that comes up. I don't know if they go over this, but can't remember. If you see lines at regular intervals on your paper, it's the exact same smudge. Obviously, I'm not very good at duplicating this. Exact same distance apart, exact same smudge. What does that tell you? What should that tell you?
Oh, it could be that the drum have a line in it. The
Okay.
surface is not smooth. You know, there is a line, a horizontal line.
Possibly, yeah. But this is like just kind of like a repetitive smudge that's coming through there.
So it will be the fuser roller.
Well, it's not smearing, it's cooked in. But you just have that same repetitive mark about every 3 inches on the page. It's the exact same mark every 3 inches. It's been going on for a while.
On a laser printer? What kind of printer?
Let's say a laser printer.
Has to be in some of the drums to be repetitive.
Mm-hmm. Not the drum, but a roller. So you have a dirty roller. Now, looking at a laser printer, these things might have 15, 20 rollers in there. So how do you know which roller it is? Do you want to take that whole printer apart looking for that one dirty roller? Cleaning every roller, hoping it's the one?
By
Yeah,
the
Alan?
dist. Oh, sorry.
Oops, 1 second. Go ahead, Alan.
Maybe it's like a certain way you can tell that which roller based off how far down it is down the paper.
How far apart the smudges are. So the distance between the smudges. Interestingly, if you go to the manufacturer's website, they will have a chart where you can measure it. And you could like put it right up next to it. And based on the distance between the smudges, they thought ahead and they made every single roller inside the laser printer a different size, different diameter. So based on the distance of the smudges, it will tell you, okay, it's roller number 7 that's dirty. So you can go in, go right to that roller, clean that one roller, and you're done. Good guess, Alan. Where'd you read that in the book?
Stab in the dark.
Shot in the dark.
Say you read it in the book.
I read it in the book.
There we go.
Is that close to what you were going to say, Umberto? Got it. So, pretty neat little feature, save you some time. If you remember that one, if you had a dirty roller, you can just measure it out and get it taken care of really quickly. All right. Laser printers, poor print quality. Can be your printer drivers, applications, Windows, or the printer itself. So things you want to do if you're going to go in on a laser printer, you want to unplug it and let it cool down for 30 minutes. Remember, it has that hot fuser in there. It will burn you. So give it at least 30 minutes to cool down before you reach in there and start messing around with a bunch of stuff. You can take out the toner cartridge itself carefully, rock it, don't shake it, just rock it. If you shake it, you'll be cleaning up for hours, I promise. And then replace the toner cartridge back into the printer itself. And if your printing was getting faded, it means you're probably low on toner, and this will buy you time until a new toner cartridge can get there. So you might get a few hundred more pages out of it. Econ mode uses less printer or uses less toner. That might be on itself. So you can actually go and turn that off unless you're almost out of toner, then you might want to leave it on. Paper quality may not be high enough. Printer itself may need cleaning. And then your page count will tell you if there is any routine maintenance that is required. Maybe it needs a service pack, something along those lines. The laser drum itself, which is inside the toner cartridge, may need to be replaced. Distorted images can be caused by foreign material in there, dust and debris, all that kind of fun stuff. And if the page has a gray background, it means the image drum is worn and needs to be replaced. It's not able to hold that charge from the initial corona wire. And then ghosted images are usually caused with the problems with the image drum, or the corona wire itself may not be hitting the charge it needs to in order to clean it. Because when you're seeing ghost images, the cleaning process is not being completed properly. All right. Other problems, laser printer problems and solutions. Blank pages. Pretty simple. Got a toner. Try a diagnostic print. If that doesn't work, check your power supply. Dirty printouts. The toner isn't fully cooked in. It's kind of smearing and smudging. Means your fuser is not reaching proper temperature. Either it needs to be cleaned, or your paperweight may be too high. We talked about this a little earlier. If the paperweight is too heavy, then the paper is thicker. It's going to require more heat in order to bring that page up to the proper temperature to melt the polyester toner into the page. So it could be just adjusting the settings with regards to the paper. If not, the fuser itself may be dying and may need to be replaced, in which case you would call in a printer tech to replace that fuser. Yes, Randy.
Okay, you said calling a printer tech. I was about to ask, how easy is it to change a fuser?
Okay, certain things on there we don't touch. Fuser is one of them. We don't touch a fuser. We don't touch the high voltage power supply. We don't touch the transfer corona or the corona wires. These are high voltage items. We don't play with them. We would call in a certified printer tech at that point to come in and take care of it. As a help desk technician, we, as far as laser printers go, we are basic maintenance. We're freeing up printer jams, checking drivers, clearing debris, changing toners, things along those lines. It's going to be in-depth mechanical issues. It is dangerous working on laser printers, so you would call in a certified tech. Interestingly, in Marvin and I's first cohort, when we were TAs, We actually had a certified printer tech in the class who ironically was not there when we went over printers. We're like, man, that was your day to shine and you weren't even here.
Right. Didn't even show up. Ben, man.
Yeah, once he got Fallout 2077 or whatever it is, he
Yeah.
checked out. He was
No
done.
longer. Yeah. He just came in and told us little pieces about the game.
Yeah, he took his reward early and lost motivation.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll talk about this after this. All right. Blotchy print, uneven dispersion of the toner itself. Shake the toner to kind of even out a little bit more. And check your fusing rollers to make sure they're heating properly. Vertical white lines, toner itself is clogged. Again, shake the toner or rock the toner. Don't shake the toner. Shaking toner ruins whatever clothing you're wearing. So, all right. Incomplete characters, adjust your printer density. Creases in the pages. It's likely the printer type, you have too thin of paper running through it and it's kind of getting crinkled as it's going through. Paper jams. These are horrible in laser printers. They happen on occasion, but thankfully, most laser printers at this point will say you have a jam in door 3. So you go over to, they have the doors numbered on the printer. You can open up just door 3, pull out the paper gently because any piece that gets left behind, you have to go in after. So try not to tear the pages as you're pulling them out, because if you get like a little tiny square inch piece stuck in there somewhere, every page that follows, it's going to get jammed. So be very careful with that. Pulling multiple sheets, you either have humidity issues, so the pages are sticking together, or too much paper in the drawer itself. So you might need to lighten it up a little bit, pull out about 20 or 30 sheets, try printing, see if that helps. If it doesn't, it likely may be that you're too humid. This is definitely an issue in Florida. All right. Inkjet and impact printers. Poor print quality for inkjet printers. Check your paper type, make sure it is the right kind, especially if you're printing like photos, things of that nature. Double check your ink levels. Make sure you at least have the ink capable of doing what you're trying to do. Try removing them and reinstalling them so they can kind of recalibrate. And then use the clean sponge or cleaner sponge that's near the carriage arresting spot to clean the print heads. That may help. Impact printers, check your ribbon. It may need to just be advanced a little bit or replaced. Check the print head itself for dirt, dust, and debris, because like we said, a lot of times with impact printers, they are in industrial settings like warehouses and auto repairs and mechanic shops and things like that. Places where you will need multi-part forms. So auto shops, bills of lading, stuff like that tend to work out pretty good with regards to multi-part forms. The spacing on the print head might need to be adjusted as well, because it may be sitting back too far. It might have been serviced recently. When it was put back on, it was pushed back a little bit too far, so it's not quite getting a full impact on the printer, and it may need to just be slightly adjusted. All right, I'm going to pause it here. All right, now at the end of this technical session, we should now be able to compare and contrast different types of printers, identify common steps for installing the printers, follow the manufacturer's suggestions. It's usually a good one. Identify common pitfalls when installing a printer, and then common problems that come up with printers and describe how to solve them. There we go.